Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. for a roll call.
Mr. Doherty,
I'm here.
Reverend Eiler,
Here.
Dr. Lorenz,
Here.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Here.
and Ms. Washburn.
Here. All board members are present.
Recording in progress.
Sorry.
I guess we are recording. All right.
That's just the way I double check to make sure this is working.
Okay. So just for the benefit of our audience, we are in person in the Loveland Intermediate Middle School Media Center. All board members are present, along with our superintendent and treasurer. We have some audience members in person, including some people who are going to speak at public participation, as well as administrators. But for the purpose of those who are online, we are obviously also recording this meeting and Zooming it live. Or excuse me, YouTubing it live, however it's getting out there live. And so that is the setup. The first item on our agenda is to approve the board agenda. Board members, you have received it. It's been made live in board docs for anyone who's online. It board docs, I believe we have copies on the table here for those who are in the room. There were a couple of additions, I think, to the human resources items, but otherwise it is the agenda that you saw when it was last Friday. Couple other additions.
Well, Board Docs has been experiencing some issues as a result of an update this past weekend that's been driving me bonkers. Because certain things have appeared, we get rid of them. So if there is something wonky in there, it is not.
Okay, but the items on the agenda have remained.
The items are,
There are
yes.
some reports and some items that have been added.
It's
and
the
maybe-
attachments that were an issue.
Attachments. Okay, thank you. So we did not yet have a motion. Is there a motion to approve that agenda?
So moved.
I heard Mrs. Washburn first and then Mr. Doherty second. So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? Can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schwetzner.
Yes.
motion carried. The first item on that agenda is to approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2022 regular session of the Board of Education. We were supposed to have we had scheduled a work session, and between that meeting and this meeting, and that meeting was canceled. So this is the most recent meeting, and the minutes are there to be approved. So is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
And I'll second. Dr. Swetchnow moved and I will second. Are there any questions, any amendments, any corrections, any questions about those minutes? Seeing none, let's vote on that.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes,
Mr. Doherty,
Abstain.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
motion carried.
For the record, the abstention is because I wasn't here.
Okay, the next item on my agenda is to welcome the guests. Welcome to our guests. Welcome to those of you who are viewing this online. We're glad to have you here. And glad you took time out of your evening to be here. We've got a few presentations this evening, so it will, I think, an informative meeting. And I would ask you to all rise and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item, 1.6 on the agenda is for hearing of the public. We do have hearing of the public and each person should give their name and address. If you're with a group, you should state your affiliation. Each person will have 3 minutes to address any one particular topic or item. Several people wish to speak, then we limit the total time to 30 minutes. And anyone who speaks during that period, if they wish to speak again, they may not speak until all who have asked to speak have had the opportunity. So I believe, Mr. Giuffre, we have some folks signed in to speak with us.
We do. We have 4, and the first one up is Dave Shumacher.
Good evening.
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 I want to speak of graduation 5-star rating. Loveland's children, like all Ohio children, are required by law to attend school between the ages of 6 and 18. Their first 8 years are primarily to prepare for their last 4 years. That is high school. Their high school years are spent completing all requirements for graduation. The state report card tracks each school district's graduation rate. This year's report card has the class of 2021's 4-year graduation rate, as well as the class of 2020's 5-year graduation rate. It also assigns a star rating to the graduation rates, with 5 stars being the highest. This year's report card awarded Loveland the 5-star rating. Unfortunately, Loveland failed to graduate all students that should have graduated. This is sadly ironic given that Loveland's teaching staff boasts the second highest percentage of master's degrees within the 4-county region. Indian Hills first. Is Loveland's 5-star rating misleading? I think so. Although it didn't, Loveland could have failed to graduate up to 26 students for the combined 2021 and 2020 senior classes and still kept the 5-star rating. But 14 losses, which actually did occur, is tragic enough. I don't think any school district should boast getting a 5-star graduation rating from the state of Ohio unless they attain 100% graduation. We're talking about children here. We're talking about people's futures. There are a few local schools with 5-star ratings that did attain 100% graduation rates. Too bad they have to share the honor with lesser school districts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Amy Shaw.
Good evening. My name is Amy Scholl. My address is 777 Cedar. Thank you for providing the opportunity to speak this evening. I am asking the community to support our levy on November 8th. By way of introduction, I'm a lifelong Ohio resident. I've practiced law here for 22 years, longer than I care to admit. And I've lived in the district for more than 8 years. I am also the very proud parent of 4 current Loveland Tigers. Here's why I'm supporting the levy. First, before moving to Loveland, our family lived in the Little Miami School District for 30 years. Those of you that have lived here for a while know that Little Miami went through a really rough spell. The voters there failed 8 consecutive levies, and many families left, including ours, to find a more supportive community. It literally took years for Little Miami to recover from that situation, and it did so only after passing an absolutely huge levy. For those of you who think you don't like your local school administration, just wait until the state comes in to take over your schools. None of us want that to happen in Loveland. Second, even though the district has continued a remarkable standard of excellence in the last few years, our students have already been impacted by the last 2 levy failures. Busing, of course, is the most notable and widely seen example, but there are others. Gifted services were cut for our students. This negatively impacted some of our best and brightest students, some of whom have already left for other schools. Band also starts a year later now. Instead of starting in 5th grade, students start in 6th grade, which delays their development in that important program. And of course, the levy failures impact our ability to retain and attract talented educators and administrators. We simply cannot withstand further cuts. Third, I trust this district's request for funding. Loveland has efficiently and effectively delivered high-quality services to our students, and it is doing so with less funding than some of our neighboring schools. As we know, and as we've heard, Loveland, Sycamore, and Madeira districts have recently been recognized as being the top 2 districts in the state of Ohio. Yet Loveland spends nearly $2,000 less compared to Sycamore and nearly $800 less compared to Madeira. Imagine what we're going to be able to achieve here when we have adequate funding. Finally, regarding transparency, the district's leaders have gone to great lengths to ensure that all community members have numerous opportunities to offer input and receive information to assess this funding request. For those who persist in denigrating the leadership and our teachers based on outdated and unreasonable criticism, please consider channeling your anger and your dislike of taxes into more constructive pursuits. Instead of flooding social media with grievances and vitriol, consider sharing your abundant energy by volunteering to teach students important life skills. Instead of inundating the district and wasting our tax dollars with frivolous and voluminous public records requests, consider working to find solutions for funding our schools. By all means, demand change from your state legislators. No one likes Ohio's school funding system. I think we can agree on that. But a vote against this levy in November does absolutely nothing to change Ohio's system. It simply delays necessary funding and it disrupts our children's education. On November 8th, please support our students and our entire Loveland community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Gina Schroeder. Gina.
I don't know if I can follow that. My name is Gina Schroeder. My address. Okay. I have 4 children in Loveland schools. They range from elementary, junior high, or intermediate and high school now. So I've been in the system for a long time, and I'm super thankful for the positive impact that the Loveland teachers and staff have had on my children and my family. Every day, my youngest comes home very happy to go to school, and she comes home very happy from school, which is amazing. Every day, I have to work around picking up my high school kids and taking them to school. And also the shift in the lack of busing and the earlier time with the intermediate school. My 5th grader has to wake up and go to school at 6:30 a.m., an hour before my high schoolers. It's just a madhouse, both in the morning and the afternoon shuffle. I know that we were doing what we can do. However, the fact that the levy did not pass the last time has greatly affected my family. I did have to quit my job in order to be home and be available for them. I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to do that. However, there are other people that I don't know that don't. I have a single mother neighbor, and we take her kids to school. And there are many, many, many other people that are struggling without busing for high school students. It is a big factor in our personal lives. That being said, I know that our teachers are working their tiger tails off to provide a positive environment for our children. They are using the resources that they have at their disposal. When I have been able to go in for Valentine parties and field trips and Rainbow Science Day, I see, you get to see the amazing things that our staff is doing. And also you see how they're working their very full classroom spaces. And for a long time, LCSD was also having music and art and trailers. I don't know if they're still doing that. It was very inventive, but just seeing that and seeing the impact of what a lack of resources does to the children's experience, it's pretty impactful if you actually go in and volunteer. I also have all of my kids have qualified for gifting services. My older 2 got to be in the green room and things like that. But my younger 2, they don't get to, even though they qualify for those services. That is a disappointing factor without the levy passing. And And my hope is that we will all come together to pass this next levy in November. I would like to challenge anyone that is thinking about the transparency and the lack of trust, and just ask for you to consider who this is impacting. It's impacting our kids. And in order to make our community thrive, we need to invest in our children and invest back into our community. So as our staff and schools work very hard to provide for our schools in a positive way, I just want to pay it back to them and support them in the way that we can. And that is in voting for the levy in November. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Carol Hall.
Hello. My name is Carol Hall. I am here as the Loveland Music Booster President and as the Loveland Middle School Drama Director to respectfully address ongoing issues in the middle school and high school auditoriums. Hey, this is not an attempt to complain, find fault, or finger point. The only fingers pointed need to be directed at the state of Ohio for allowing the ruled unconstitutional funding of our schools to continue for 28 years. The music educators that you have employed in your music department are not only extremely experienced and well educated, They're also a bunch of really nice people who do what it takes to make their programs work. They're not complainers, so some of you may not be aware of these situations. We've limped along for a number of years, but unfortunately, we are now at a point where we no longer do that. Although some of these things have been addressed, it's important to be aware that over the 8 years I've been here, both auditoriums have dealt with water issues, including water coming into both lighting booths, ruining computers, lighting equipment, and wiring. Students having to dodge large trash cans catching water on their way to the stage. A student asking to move their seat because water was dripping on their head. Over the summer, the water issue at the middle school was being addressed, with the end result being the damage was more expensive than originally thought. We have also had ongoing HVAC problems, which I also believe are currently being addressed. Our electric and lighting issues are being looked into as well. We have been dealing with lights that won't turn on, lights that won't turn off, and flashing lights that are out of our control. In our fall show last year, we had to offer refunds to anyone in the audience that may have a sensitivity to flashing lights. Now our lights will turn on, but we have no control over them. The dimmers and entire lighting system and wiring need to be replaced in both auditoriums. During COVID, the auditorium light issue became very apparent when classes needed to be held in both. The can light fixtures are so old and inaccessible that it's very difficult to impossible for the bulbs to be replaced. When parents come to see a concert or production, we are not trying to set up mood lighting. There just aren't enough working fixtures. The broken seats and carpets are subject for another day. All of these issues impact our music and drama departments regularly and any school functions that utilize the auditorium for presentation or meetings. We also bring in other schools, their students and parents into our facilities for music in the parks and Showfest, which brings in thousands of people. Our fall drama production is on hold currently until we know a time frame for the lighting repair. All that being said, we are fully aware that the upcoming levy does not contain any new facility or building upgrades. But as studies shown, a vibrant and thriving music program improves testing in all subjects. And I know many of you sitting here have had children and grandchildren that have benefited from the music programs either at Loveland schools or at other schools. And we know how important these programs are to our kids. They find their people, they find their place. I see it all the time with my kids, my own kids personally as well. I'm going to take off my booster hat and my drama hat for just a minute and just echo what this lovely lady said, whose name I can't remember. Bravo. Yes, vote yes for the levy. My question to the board is, in this time of shrinking budgets, how will our aging auditoriums and amazing programs be maintained? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else?
No, that is all.
Thank you all very much. I hope that everyone understands that the Board of Education is happy to hear input from anyone, whether they are saying things we want to hear or saying things that we need to hear. And it was lovely to have a public participation session that had to do with the benefits of our students this evening, whether it was something that's going well or something that needs attention. So we appreciate that.
Kathy, if the board doesn't object, would it be okay to ask Mike or his team to maybe comment on a couple of points that were raised this evening, being the graduation rate and the condition of the two auditoriums?
Graduation rate actually did dig into that after meeting with Mr. Shumacher. We had this past year, you have special ed students that will defer. So we had some of those, which we know are a different status, but we had one individual, one student that did not graduate, but did eventually achieve their GED. And so were we 100%? No, but we're as close to 100% as you can get. That was one student. And that was last year. 2020, I don't know. I'm just speaking for last year.
The others, Mike, were, as you called them, deferrals?
Yeah, so special ed students, we can educate up until the age of 22 years old. And so therefore they can defer their diploma, but they're still, due to the state of Ohio and the way they account for it, they're still marked against the graduation rate for a school district.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, in 2021, if a special ed student deferred, they still would have the opportunity to graduate within the bounds of the laws of the state of Ohio, but they would not have been counted in those numbers.
Correct. So they'll count against you for 20, not that
Right.
they would count against the graduation rate for this year, they will graduate when they decide they would like to take the diploma, but you're not going, the district will not get credit for that graduation or counted against that year. I think Mr. Shumacher talked about at the last board meeting that in a lot of districts that's a difficult thing because the number of deferrals does hurt the graduation rate, but it's what's best for the kids too. So.
And then again, just to reiterate, if indeed you on the state of Ohio scorecard showed 100% of your graduates graduated on time, it would mean that you had no special education students that deferred.
Right, which is pretty, yeah, that's rare.
I would assume the larger your special ed population is, the more likely you were to defer.
100%, yes. Yep.
And Mike, the other
But I think that probably for the public comment section is over.
That's up to the board.
Okay. Why don't we go back and at the end of this, it's okay with me if he has a chance to restate any concerns. But again, this is not an opportunity for interactive questioning. So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, the second part of the question was the condition of the two auditoriums and various problems.
Yeah, I had met
There, thank you.
I had met and we had discussed some of the issues, addressed it with Mr. Ames. I know the lighting he is addressing. I'll turn it over to John and let John kind of discuss what's going on.
I was reading John's report earlier today, and it was a busy summer for
Yes, it was
facilities work.
It was
very busy summer. For the lighting for the high school auditorium, I've been working with Beck Studios and Vincent Lighting for the past year. Last summer, we were hoping to get some parts in and some work on the high school, but the equipment was not available. And we were able to get the high school running. It wasn't great. And at this point in time, I have a complete quote to replace both systems at the high school and at the middle school. That's to purchase the equipment. We're just trying to get that going because they did say that it's quite a long delivery still on a lot of the equipment. So I have a price from Vincent Electric, and Beck Studios has sent me the price for the high school, excuse me, the middle school, and they still need to do some more research on the high school. Ballpark, each building, just the equipment without any new lightings, just the dimmer rack itself is about $60,000 to $80,000 for each building. And then we will have to bring in contractors to install and wire everything up. So that'll probably be another $60,000, $80,000. So as soon as I get the second quote, we're going to place an order for the equipment. And if what I talked to David Knapp, if we can get the lights running for right now, we'll go ahead and let things take place in the building. And if it goes out completely or where you're not able to do anything, then we're going to shut it down for 3 weeks, just completely shut it down and swap everything out at that point in time.
So the related question there is, you have the funding in your PI account?
It's getting very, very tight right now. We've talked about it. I have maybe $500,000 left in PI to cover through March of 23. $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking $125,000 per building to do the auditorium, it goes very quickly. So it always makes me very nervous to run down into the couple $100,000 in case something does completely go haywire. The issues that we were talking about with the water, roof leak, that was in flat roof buildings, they have large 8-inch downspout pipes that are inside the building. And they're put together with rubber gaskets. Pipe runs 100 feet probably, and the gaskets started rotting. To do it, you need to take the auditorium down for the summer to build scaffolding up to the ceiling of it. So it did leak. I have not saying it didn't. And once they got up there, they found that they needed to go ahead and replace everything. They extended the whole job. So 25-year-old building, 30-year-old building, the high school is. So things are starting to fail like those rubber gaskets. And it's one of those things you don't tear into it until you do know you have a problem. But once we saw what we were dealing with, we went ahead and replaced the whole thing. So it is, as we say, it's a 30-year-old building and things are getting old. And we don't spend money uselessly just to replace things for the sake of replacing, unless it's a major component like a chiller or a boiler or something like that. So it's an ongoing process. And I do apologize for not having. I know. Yeah, and we've hopefully we will have all the equipment here within the next month, maybe. A lot of it is waiting for things to come in from China because a lot of this equipment is Chinese based. So working on it. Hopefully we will have it. And hopefully we can get, I do have Beck Studios coming out tomorrow to try to get the lights in the middle school figured out. So at least we can run that way.
Assuming it's some kind of new LED system.
Yes. Well, the lights, the new system, it's all computer based. The old system is all electronics based. So we can reuse the existing light fixtures and we can add to them as a grouping guys. We can pull that one down. So right now I'm not replacing fixtures until we see what the new lighting system is going to make work. And at that point in time, then we will say, okay, I'll talk to Sean and Jeff and say, take that light bar down, replace it with LED. I know one person said the look of the LEDs is not the same as the old incandescents. So that's, it'll last 50 times longer, but is the light going to be not what they really look for? So it's something we're going to play with, and Sean will probably go out and see what they've got in other districts, see what they like. I'd love to go with the LEDs because I'll never have to worry about it, but.
So maybe a subject for facilities committee.
Sure.
You would mind?
I will get it together.
On an agenda.
I hate the idea that we're already hamstrung in what we provide and that we're being hamstrung more by our facility. Sometimes there's not much you can do.
There's not much you can do. I mean, we keep the facilities in good shape. There obviously is a limit. You're limited to how much money you have during the year. Historically, every 10 or so years, we would have a bond issue. And at that point in time, you would need to be able to deal with things that need to be fixed every 10 years. Well, it's been since 2000, since we've had our last bond issue. So we're 10 years out. We're just trying to keep everything moving, and some things are failing, like the lights. And when they do fail, then you address them. But like when your car dies, you don't know it's going to die till it dies, and then you have to address it.
And I'm okay if we want to entertain a question about the graduation topic, but
It's all right with me. All I would say is that this board is glad to have the information. My suggestion would be if there is additional information either about the lights or if there's additional information about the graduation rate, we'd be happy to have the administrators take that information. The board is not going to go fix any lights, and the board can assure the district that our aim is to graduate 100% of the Loveland students. It's simply not always possible, but that is the aim. There is nothing that this district is doing to either not have productions in the auditoriums or not have 100% graduation rate. If there's some other question that wants to be posed to the board, we don't have those answers, but we'll either take another question or we'll encourage you to get additional information to the administrators who can hopefully do something about it.
I want to reiterate that, we're very pleased and anything that very quickly. So it was just more of an overall awareness for emergency for fingers. So just want to reiterate, you're doing a wonderful job.
You just wanted us to know if we come to a production and it drips on our head or we can't see, that's why. So.
I personally placed a bucket in the middle of a performance before. So.
And let's go back. Please go ahead and make any additional comments.
I thought we just said it would be okay for you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
Well, thank you. I wanted to get discussion, and I got it. I usually don't. So you're right. So what my point is that All the public sees is what's on the web, what's in the state report card. And they rank schools based upon that. And that's why I took what's given, what the public knows. The public doesn't know about the noise or the errors that is in the graduation rate, because the state keeps putting out this thing that has students with disabilities that are going to graduate. They keep recording that in the graduation rate. So all the schools are compared on that. So like Sycamore, for instance, Sycamore had a 100% graduation rate last year. Not, well, yeah, I think, yeah, 2021, 100%. Madera's had it for 5 years in a row. Because if you take all these, it sounds terrible. If you take the learning disability IEPs that can defer, if you remove them, or the better way is to just graduate them because they're going to graduate, that disappears. Loveland's doing very well, but you still have losses. You had 2020, you had one. Tongue in cheek. That's why I said, total of 14. There was one in 2020, 4 in 2021. So you had 5 in those 2 years instead of 14. That's the truth. But you don't hear it in here. You don't see it anywhere. All you see is what's on a report card. So thank you for at least having the opportunity to get this out, because all I'm asking is for truth. I'm saying put out the truth when you can put it out. So you can say we're working towards 100%. I've not had that in 8 years I've been coming in here since I retired. I've not had that kind of cooperation. So I'm encouraged. I have to tell you, I'm encouraged. At least we're talking about it. And maybe we'll start showing what those numbers are in timely fashions instead of having to wait for 2.5 years to get some of this, or at least 1.5 years. Because I'm talking about 2021. But you did, Mr. Broadwater, you gave me data for 2022. I dropped my teeth. So thank you.
Thanks.
And Mike, let me just to follow up, is there something in the way that Madera, or I think Sycamore was the other example, might be worth looking at, or do they just not have the same issue?
Yeah, I'm surprised because they have a large special education program as well. But I'll certainly look into it. It's one where at the end of the day, we're trying to do great things for kids, all kids. And so it is a difficult process that we've been handed in terms of reporting. But I'll look. I'm surprised that they're there.
To me, it would seem very hard that anybody could reach 100. That's the
right.
If that's the requirement.
They serve a very similar population.
Yeah.
I go to meetings with their special education all the time. They're having very similar challenges that we're having. But those numbers are fluid, they fluctuate. It's probably at 1, those numbers are going to be fluid, fluctuate with the number of kids that are deferring. But that is worth looking into how we're reporting that kids are deferring. Actually in 4 years or 5 years. We can definitely, I meet those folks, I can definitely call them.
Well, and I would think from a board standpoint, going back to Kathy's, of our goal is to have 100% of these children graduate. I don't care if it's a year of graduation or 4 years later, as long as they have the opportunity to do that. And I don't want them to get lost because they're not getting tracked by the state of Ohio number that we're. And I really doubt that they are, I'm sure.
Mike, I know you weren't necessarily prepared to get into a big discussion about this, but maybe you could commit to us that in a future meeting, maybe during your superintendent's report, you could cover this topic in enough detail. We have an understanding about the way it works.
Sure,
What the facts
I can do
are.
that. And I can even get some comparables. Actually, Mr. Shumacher has provided a good table that would show you, he will show the deferments and so forth. I just want to make sure as we go through it, just being respectful and going through it the proper way. So I can certainly do that and get with Jesse and I can get some comparables so you can look at it. Sure.
Great, thanks.
All right, thank you. I think that would be it for public participation. We'd move on to the next item is administrator reports. As usual, those are administrator that are available for docs. The Board of Education uses those to know what is happening in the different buildings, what is happening in the different departments. And those are for our information as we conduct our meeting. Unless there are any pressing questions about those, we just move on past those and move the rest of the meeting. For my board president report then, I would let you know that we have had a few communications since the last board meeting. As I mentioned before, we met on August 23rd. The September 6th meeting was canceled. We've had some board communications regarding the public records request log. I believe all of those communications have been handled through the treasurer's office. We've had one communication concerning safety in the schools. That was a follow-up to an earlier communication that we had, and I believe that's been handled through the superintendent's office. We had one communication concerning the population data in the district website that's being researched. We've talked a lot about it's a little difficult to pin down a number of the population for Loveland. We believe that a 50,000 number may be coming from the 4514 zip code, but we know that that's not contiguous with our district. We know that we can't just look at the city of Loveland population because that is only, used to be about a third of our district, but I think that it's less than a third now. And we have more population in Miami Town and in Sims Township. We have a tiny little bit in Goshen Township and a little bit in Warren County, Hamilton Township. Don't frown at me, Mr. Giuffre. We do have a tiny little bit in Goshen Township that I didn't know about until just recently. Anyway, population data is a little bit problematic, but we are working on that. So that was communications for us. I do just want to say, and I don't want to get into any discussion, but I'm a little bit surprised to be told that we haven't discussed graduation rate, because we certainly have discussed graduation rate quite a few times over the past years and have in fact attested every time that we are aiming for 100% graduation rate. So it's not new what we are aiming for as a Board of Education, but we'll be happy if we have some more reports on it. So thank you. I will make note that OSBA happens as usual in November. I believe that Reverend Eilert and Mrs. Washburn are going to attend, and I believe that they are willing to serve as board delegate and alternate. So that is being taken care of. So we appreciate that. I will let you know about policy work, which you see on the agenda. You see 4 policies in need of update or change. Those are the policies that you will be agreeing to. Those are the policies that the resolution will cover. You will also see a status of work that Mr. Giuffre has put together, some policies that are being merged. The only thing that is happening with those policies, you will see that we have several policies that apply both to, not both, because there are 3 things, administrators, classified, and certified staff. And we have 3 policies, 1 for each. And we are making an attempt as we try to make our policy manual as streamlined and as efficient and effective as possible. We're going to merge those, and they are going to be in a 2900 is that correct? 2900 category. So we're not doing anything to those policies. We are just making them a single policy that covers all people. Part of this attempt is also to be efficient in any policy updates and revision. It's very difficult if you have this amorphous kind of octopus and you're trying to cover it all. It's also very difficult to do guidelines if you have all of these policies. So that's what you're going to see tonight, the 4 policies that you'll be voting on, plus the merger of those sets of policy. What will happen next? Last month, we rescinded the low priority unneeded policies. This month, we are assuming philosophically that we are keeping all of the high and required policies. There's no board action required for that because those policies exist. The next step for the policies for the administrators and the policy committee is to review the medium priority policies and make sure we need them or don't need them. There'll be some more work involved in that. But during that work, we will also review any of the high priority policies, which we're keeping, but might be in need of revision. So hopefully in a month or 2, you'll see a lot of policies to deal with. 2 more things for my report. I would like to hear from the board. I asked at a previous meeting if the board an additional work session that was purely a work session to talk about board governance, board work, thinking about, we have some commissions that we need to appoint folks to next year. We have committee work that needs to be done next year. So thinking ahead to the year, I have pulled out 4 dates. There are 3 Tuesdays toward the end of November, beginning of December that we do not have meetings scheduled for. And surely you want to have a meeting during that time. So that would be November 29th, December 6th, or December 13th. However, another possibility is a Saturday morning, which to me is a good time to get some work done. You kind of remove yourself from the being tired after a day of work, and you start out Saturday morning with a little bit of coffee and do some work and be done by lunchtime. So that would be December 10th. So I'm asking board members to let us know. I believe that I've heard individually from Reverend Eilert that December 10th works, from Mr. Doherty that December 10th works, as long as we're out in time for, we believe that might be the day of the crosstown shootout. So we're not positive about that, but that might be something somebody might be interested, not Mr. Doherty in particular, just he's the one who pointed out that that might be
It's
happening.
also the day of our high school music, whatever, what we call it, the holiday.
Oh, I thought I had checked the holiday musical.
Sounds of the season. There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
They do
That'll be
have
that night.
that night. Okay, so we wouldn't be interfering in the morning. That's not the. Okay, very good. I thought I had checked the calendar that, that looked okay. I think I heard from Dr. Swetchnow that Saturday morning was okay. I did not hear from Mrs. Washburn yet.
Probably, but I can't commit yet.
We would like to get a meeting on the books so that everybody can have it on their calendar. So.
Get back to us tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Well, then I only have one other thing for my report. And I know this is a teaser for other people who are reporting, so I'm not trying to steal anyone's thunder, but I did provide 5 stars to folks around the room, board members, treasurer, superintendent. I thought perhaps you could give them you can keep them all yourself if you want to put them on your computer or something, but you could give them to someone who you feel has been instrumental in the achievement of the district. And, we're fairly proud, and I think others will report on it, but I just wanted you to know where the stickers came from. And that's my report. I don't know if there are other board members who have a report. I know that Reverend Eilert and Mrs. Washburn have a report, but maybe you will do that when we come to the student representative resolution.
Well, I'm wondering though, because she's already presented.
I know, I was going to mention that she's, we have a new student rep who we're making work before we even officially approve her job, but I think that's okay. But if you want to report on that then, or you want to report on it now?
Well, at least we can vote on it later, but we're
Okay.
doing a little
Very good.
introduction now. So Michaela Feldman Wheeler is here tonight, and we are very grateful for her presence and coming to this first of the meetings. We had 3 wonderful candidates apply to be our board representatives, and talking to Mr. Broadwater, even at the end of last year, we said we've got really highly engaged students that do this role, and challenge for them to get here in the midst of all their other activities. So why not, if they're all seemingly suitable for the role, and indeed they very much were so, we said, let's go ahead and bring all 3 of them into this role. And case in point today, Michaela is the only one that was able to be here. So we're very grateful for her presence. And
Are they all seniors?
all seniors.
All seniors.
So Michaela, that's a lot of pressure. You have to do this and then we're going to vote on you.
Yeah.
Think of this as a big job interview.
If
I'll
there's,
say she had the highest pressure job interview part, because everything went wrong with our interview portion, and technology and
Lights
placement.
went out, the ceiling.
And she smiled, Wi-Fi wasn't working. She smiled and
did she get out a ladder and replace a light bulb?
she did not.
No.
Everything short of that.
Okay. All right. Well, with all that said, then we'll move on to student representative to the board report. Michaela.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michaela. As I said, I'm a senior. All right. So we'll start with the LECC, LPS, and LES buildings. So those schools had a well-attended parent and guardian information nights. for the start of the school year. And we are very appreciative to all the families who came to check in and learn more about schools. I would also like to take a moment to welcome the new staff in this. So we've already started working on our building goals that we created for the school year, and we've mapped out professional learning days and are planning for ways to maximize our professional times with teachers. Mrs. Foreign and Mr. Fancher have attended the Hamilton County ESC Literacy and Math Council meetings, along with several teachers to collaborate with content area leaders around the Cincinnati area. And they will also be participating in the BCSC Principal Roundtable. Oh. Okay, there you go. For the 2022 and 2023 school year. All right, so moving on to the LIS LMS grade 5 through 8. Anybody's on there? So building signage and updates for these buildings, we continue to look for ways to update our schools to provide the most comfortable and pleasant learning environment for our students as possible in the most cost-efficient manner. So recent updates to our schools include new building signage, LMS lockers being painted over, which will refresh some of the entryways in our LIS and LMS buildings. So map testing. So all students at LIS and LMS have now completed their fall map testing, both reading and math. So this is basically to provide a benchmark data point that will be used to measure the retention and baseline to measure the progress year. So as for supporting positive behavior and intervention supports, LMS and LIS will again recognize students and staff on a regular basis through Tiger Up. Students are nominated by their teachers and staff and also nominated by their peers. So also some exciting news in this building. The grand opening of the LIS Tiger Up store was Tuesday, September 13th. The store will be open twice a week for students to purchase items and experiences with their Tiger Up tickets earned from displaying our core values. All right, and one major upcoming event, which is September 30th, the 8th grade music night, which will be at the varsity football game. All right, moving to the high school. All right, so Link Crew, which is senior students, led by Mrs. Partridge and Mrs. Dell, hosted an awesome 9th grade orientation. Freshman students were given a tour of the building and participated in get to know you activities as a welcome to high school. So student council students also attended Camp Kern with Mrs. Moore and other class advisors for a day of leadership and building. And as for the 2022-23 school year, we offer 21 AP courses and have 429 students taking at least one AP course. So, and also a big congratulations to Mrs. Nakata, who won the 2022 Hamilton County Conservation District Conservation Educator of the Year. And then only 1 month left of season games for most of our sports. Please come out and support us. So all LIS, LMS, and LHS staff and students have undergone ALICE safety training with Mr. Rich Bryant, who was our new athletic director at the high school. And I've talked to many classmates about the training, and we're very impressed with Mr. Bryant's training and very prepared, including myself. So also upcoming events at the high school. So many senior nights for sports have already passed, but we do have men's soccer, which is Monday, September 26th. And a little bit later, October 21st is the football senior. So Marissa Armstrong and the rest of the student council is working hard on planning homecoming, which will start with lawn painting class competition and on the 3rd and end with on the 8th with the old Hollywood theme homecoming dance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being willing to do this. We appreciated hearing your voice in there, or the voice of the student, where you said, you know, the ALICE training and what you had gotten from it. And I think that's one of the things that the board is looking for with a student rep is the voice of the students. We're glad that you're working with all the other administrators and Mr. Broadwater to report. to us so that we can both hear things that are going on and hear in a, in a good way what's happening as far as the students are concerned. You don't have family with you here tonight, do you, Michaela? I was just going to commend them on having helped such a great student get to this point in her career. So make sure you extend our congratulations to your family. Glad to have you.
Thanks.
Any questions or comments from Michaela?
Nice job.
Thank you very much. For the.
You have passed in my.
Yes, yes, it did. For anyone who is listening, we had a little bit of a microphone issue there where we switched the microphone. So in case anybody who's listening to the recording couldn't hear all of the items, the essence of Michaela's report is in board docs. So the written report is there. Also, if you didn't catch an event and you want to go back and see when it is, that's available in docs. All right. If there's nothing else, the other thing that we usually tell our student reps, Michaela, is that you are more than welcome to stay for the whole meeting, take notes, be prepared for how you want to tell us how we're doing our job. But if you have work that you need to do, you are also able to leave the meeting when you need to once your report is completed. So we thank you very much. Oh, is our audience taking that as a cue as well? Well, I didn't tell you all. You could, obviously, anyone who needs to leave our meeting. But we have such riveting resolutions. Well, we do have some riveting reports coming up, but we also have important resolutions coming up as well. But we'll move on to superintendent's updates, and I'll turn it to Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you. It's always difficult to follow students like Michaela when they're smiling, and I'm going to give away my first gold star to Michaela. You did great. You did awesome. I love your smile and your positive attitude. I am going to start with where Dr. Lorenz probably thought I was going to, and just say congratulations to our whole staff for the 5-star recognition. We are one of 12 districts out of 607 that achieved that. So that means we're top, being the math guy, I'm going to say it's a top 1.97%. And we're just very, very proud. And I think it speaks volumes for if I had, how many staff members do we have, Garth? Over 500? If I had over 500 gold stars, I'd give each and every one a gold star, because from our veteran teaching staff to our newer teaching staff, to our paraprofessionals, bus drivers, paras, and I always say never name because you're going to forget somebody, but everybody, our building administrators, even to how we report data to the state of Ohio. It shows our processes and procedures worked, but it also shows we have great kids. We have unbelievable kids, unbelievable students, families. It's a great community. And we're just very, very excited about it. So the next slide, I wanted to make sure I took advantage. You never get to say you're number one very much. So I'm going to say we're number one. The rank that the Ohio Department of Education put out, rank being number one. Those are the 12 school districts that did achieve 5 stars across the board. The total of 25 means you had 5 out of the 5 categories, so 25 points. You can see there are 3 districts in Hamilton, Loveland, Madeira, Sycamore. After that, you're not seeing any district from Butler, Warren. You're going up to Franklin County before you see another one. And so that speaks volumes for not only how well we did in this area, but the entire Southwest area of Ohio when it comes to those metrics. The next thing I would take a look at, being somebody who always likes to look at the fiscal part of it as well, I thought to myself, how do we compare with these 12? So the 12 districts that did receive 5 out of 5 stars, I wanted to look at our per pupil revenues and see what kind of bang for a buck do we get here at Loveland. You can see Loveland City Schools, we are 10th out of those 12 districts in terms of revenues per student, how much we receive per student. This is per the CUP report, all the revenues the district receives. So again, I think that is a very good metric to show that we're pretty fiscally responsible with what we do. The little side note I put over there, I dug in a little bit deeper just so I could look at all of the districts in the state of Ohio. Loveland City School District ranks 561st out of 608 districts in revenues per pupil. That means 93% of the districts across the state of Ohio receive more revenue per pupil than Loveland, yet we are sitting up top, ranked number 1 when it comes to academic performance which really is job number one. It's not all we do, obviously, performing arts. And we do a lot for our kids, and Michaela spoke a lot of what kids are interested in when it comes to link crew and leadership. But academically, we provide a very, very, very good product. The next slide, I thought I would look at expenditures and per pupil expenditures out of those 12. You can see that Loveland is now 8 out of 12. So what does that mean? How did we go from 10 out of 12 for the revenue to 8 out of 12 for expenditures? What that means is we designate more of our revenue towards the classroom. So that's why you see us bumping up in expenditures per pupil, is because we are putting more towards the classroom, and it shows when you get a report card like we have that we're very, very proud of. The statewide data that I pulled out, Loveland City School District ranks 304th out of 608 school districts in expenditures per pupil. That means we're smack dab in the middle, right? So 50% of the districts across the state spend more per pupil than Loveland City School District. But yet again, there are 12 districts that are ranked number one when it comes to academics, and Loveland being one of those. So the last slide, and then I want to get to the good information. But I've had some people asking, what has Loveland done to manage its budget each year? I think it's important to reiterate what we've heard this evening. 47 school employee positions were eliminated in 2020, 2021. I think sometimes we forget that when you talk about the gifted program, performing arts. That is how you manage a budget. If you don't have additional revenue, you need less expenditure. And so there were 47 school employee positions eliminated. The high school busing, we know, is difficult for many of our high school families. It was eliminated in 2020, 21 as well. Hiring practice, we've said this in a few board meetings, but Garth Collier has done a very nice job along with our building administration. We have saved on salaries by making sure we make good cost-efficient hiring, which means if you have a teacher retiring at the top, can we make sure that we're hiring an excellent teacher but not as much experience? And so you can get the difference in the salary, but still provide the great education. And that has been over a $600,000 savings or cost avoidance, if you want to look at it that way. Maintaining FTE counts. Before we got here, I'm not sure we did that, but we are very diligent about looking at FTE counts, where we are and where we want to be. And that's why you'll hear us say we don't want to add FTEs if we need to. Part of the information we've put out is if we need 5, if we don't want to do that, but we are certainly going to manage that. That's what we look at. That is the biggest part of our budget that we have been managing. I think it's important to remind everybody, our staff members for this year took a 0% increase in the base, and our ESSER funds have been spent very strategically. We received $5.3 million, and $2.2 million was spent on salaries that really we're just kind of supplanting what we've had. We spent, I believe it was $645,000 on the HVAC control. That when you look at COVID, that was a big part of the ESSER funds, is making sure you improve air quality. And so we work very hard at trying to do that as well. So the last slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Orso. Board of Education, you received on your desk the finished product for the strategic vision. Unfortunately, the printer missed a few things, and Mr. Setters has new ones coming where they've got all the letters in there free of charge. But that gives you an idea what it's going to look like. To review, our Loveland Tiger students pursue academic excellence, develop real world skills, seek a collaborative culture, and be community ambassadors, all of which encompasses just being a great part of a great community, and just being there and delivering what we need to deliver for our students and for our community. But I wanted to put that out so that you had that. And again, we'll have the corrected copies shortly. So before I turn it over to Dr. Orso, are there any questions for me?
I just wanted to check, Mr. Broadwater, your PowerPoint presentation is not currently on board docs. Will it go in there if anybody wants to see those slides and
we'll make
reference
it active.
numbers?
Yeah, we'll put it
So
in.
we can add that into board docs so
Yep,
folks can
thanks.
see it. And then where will this strategic vision, the corrected version, where will this be available? Not just in paper copy, I'm sure. It'll be-
Yeah, we've got, do you have it on the website already, Andrew? Okay. Yeah, so it's on the website. We have I think about 100 copies. We have them. And when I go out and do some speaking, I bring them with me along with the quality profile. So we get them out there. But if anybody would like a printed copy, let us know. We'll get it to them.
Okay.
lovelandschools.org/vision.
Vision. Okay, thank you.
Is there a web version and a PDF version there?
So a PDF version that can be downloaded or read it there. Yep. Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Broadwater? Don't see anything, so.
All right. I'll turn it over to Dr. Orso.
I am back again this month. I am going to actually just speak very briefly and then turn it over to the building principals for LES to talk about their building data as it relates to the report card. If you remember last month, I gave you the overview of the district, but I do have one more piece to show you that was not available last month whenever I reported it out. So John, if you'll go to the next slide. The progress component in the bottom middle, progress 5 stars. So this was not available last time whenever I reported back in August. So we do now have that, obviously. Unfortunately, we're not able to dig in because we don't have the individual teacher data yet, but we have enough to know that we received the 5 stars. So just to give you an idea, progress refers to value added. So you've probably heard of the value added component in the past. That's what this is. One of the things that happened with the report card reform, just to give you a little bit of history here and what this component means exactly, is we went from the ABCDF rating to a 5-star rating, 1 through 5. Progress is still the one that's a little bit wonky because if you remember the ABCDF ratings, the C, if you received a C, it was sort of like what was expected. And then if you were above or below a C, you were either better than expected or less than expected. So it never really gave anyone like great warm and fuzzies to get a C. And it was hard for the public to really understand because you look at a report card and say, well, that's a C, that's not great, but it is what was expected. So most of these I feel like have come a long way in the way that the ratings work. However, progress is still a little bit wonky because 3 stars means expected growth. And so what we're looking at is a cohort of students and following them over time on their state tests in the spring. So we look at, last year's 4th graders, how they did on their test. We expect them to grow a year between the end of 3rd grade or the end of 4th grade and the end of 5th grade. So if they grow 1 year, you get 3 stars, which doesn't feel super great, but that's how that rating is reported. So we expect them to grow 1 year. So you get 3 stars based on 1 year. If you're above 3 stars, you're above or significantly above what is expected. So 5 stars is absolutely incredible for a district to be able to achieve. And when I show you the next slide, you'll see how few districts actually were able to achieve the 5 stars and grow their students significantly more than a year's growth. So if you'll go to the next slide for me, we're looking at that bottom chart down there. And this is basically looking at each of those different components and what percentage of districts across the state earned 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stars. And so obviously we fall under the 5 stars all the way down. And so you'll see progress, which is the one I just talked about, only about 16.5% of the districts. So 100 districts across the state earn that 5 stars. And then even more impressively, the early literacy component, only 8.1% of districts across the state earn 5 stars. Obviously Loveland being one of that 8.1%. So that really just shows you the comparative data across the state, which is what we were missing last month that we're now able to present to you. So any questions for me before I turn it over to the principals to dig into their.
The only quick question I have is on that progress. And you said you don't have all the data yet, so you're not able to say, and again, I understand the concept, 3 stars means you got the expected growth.
Yes.
Do you know what kind of growth gets you 4 stars and what kind of growth gets you 5 stars? Do we have yet the breakdown of how much more than a year's worth of growth do we have to give them to get 4 stars or 5 stars?
Right. So they do
And
like
how
a.
many students do you have to do that? I mean, obviously not all of our students grew more than a year's worth of growth. So
Right.
how many, do you have that
So they-
information yet, or will you?
We will have it. They break it down sort of by grade level bands and then individual teachers as well. We just don't have that. So whenever I go into our secure data center and I click on a lot of times you can click into some of the technical documents and get the breakdown. Like if you remember achievement, I was able to tell you what percentage of our students got proficient and what percentage got advanced and all of that. That data is not available for us to view quite yet. So we know that we earned 5 stars. We know we did really well, but we're not able to dig deep into that yet. So I will be able to hopefully soon. I think they're starting to sort of release it slowly, but we just don't have access to all of it yet.
That's okay. What I feel about this 5-star rating is it's fantastic. And what I'm hoping we hear is just what things we did to make it that fantastic. Because every time that we are not doing something as well as we should be, we want to look at, well, why did that happen? What can we do to make it better? We want to be sure we know all of the things that we've been doing to get us to this kind of wonderful achievement so we can keep on doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I can tell you is it's based on standard deviations and how many standard deviations above the 1 year's growth that you are. And what the state will say is you either exceeded it, which is 4 stars, or significantly exceeded it, which is
All right,
5
I'm gonna have to
stars.
go break out my statistics book again, right?
Exactly.
I do feel like, I think we talked briefly about this the last time, in that category of progress, though, looking forward, I mean, how do you continue to achieve 5 stars if it's this, I mean, do we have to have 3rd graders at a 12th grade level eventually to, be able to maintain that kind of.
Right. And that's hard because once you've reached that level, it's like growing your students who are already in the 99th percentile. Those are the hardest students to grow because they're already so high. And so that's a great point. I think what we look at moving forward, and you'll see through the building reports, is we need to start focusing on some of our subgroups and making sure that they're growing the same amount as compared to all of our students.
If I could jump in, I think it's a very good point about, I think sometimes as educators, we hear good and bad and we go, okay, great for the good. What do we do for the bad? And we don't celebrate the good. Mr. Collier, Mr. Coles, we talked a little bit this morning about the school improvement plans and everything. This doesn't happen by accident. This is a lot of work by everybody involved, but I don't know if you have you sitting in through all the school improvement plans and that process last year, some thoughts in regards to what work went on.
So we definitely celebrate.
But don't forget to put it down a little lower again. It was up there for Michaela.
Try and do as well as
You,
Michaela.
Michaela, they're making fun of.
Yeah.
So we definitely recognize and celebrate when we do well, and we take a moment to say, hey, great job. How did we do that? Let's do that again. But in reality, we do spend a lot of time saying, what's going on with this group of kids? What's going on with that group of kids? And how do we help them grow? So we definitely see the celebration points, recognize them, but we very quickly move on real fast to say, this group didn't grow quite the way we wanted them to, which is what Dr. Orso is talking about. We'll dig into it. Yes, we got 5 overall, but within that 5, there will be subgroups and there will be groups of children that we need to continue to move and continue to grow. And that's something our building principals do an awesome job of. Get with our staff. Hey guys, great job. And then in the next breath, here's what we're going to keep doing that. And here's what we're going to do to supplement that or help that. And I'm sure they can speak to that a little bit when they get up here, but that's really the culture that we have in place. And Mr. Collier will hop in on that too, but we really do focus on celebrating those points of emphasis and saying, great job, but here's what we're going to keep doing.
And I can tell you, as Garth's coming up, we do have our central office staff meets with building administration monthly, developing school improvement plans, making sure we hold each other accountable for what we're supposed to be doing. But
that was the only
turn
other
over.
thing I was going to add is what Mike just talked about. And I'm kind of speaking to this over time that, I've been an administrator here in the district for a number of years and spent a lot of years being building principal. And in my time of being a building principal and now in central office, the culture around continuous improvement has really shifted almost night and day. When I first started as a building principal here, we were in a situation where we were considered excellent by the state of Ohio and things were good, but we really didn't dig down deep into our data. And the culture of what we have built now, and I'm not taking credit for this, the credit goes to all of our building administrators. What some of the things, I don't know if they're going to exactly talk about this, but the data meetings that go on and the amount of making sure that we're keeping students on track and where do, what students need intervention, what interventions should be putting in place, are they working? And always continuing to fine tune that work is what I feel like is that we can say that, let's just take maybe, 4 to 6 years ago, where we were at as a district collectively at all buildings with looking at student data and having data meetings and working with teachers and where it is today. I think that's the work that's really made a really huge difference in this. And I think that when you listen to Sarah and Jen for LECC and LES, and then our other building principals will be here at our next board meeting, you'll hear some of those things kind of come through.
Great, thank you.
I have one more question for Dr. Orso. In a previous iteration of the scorecard, one of the things that was taken into account was a number of AP courses being offered and the students taking AP courses. Michaela's presentation commented that we had 21 AP courses this year and 430 or so students taking AP courses. I don't need an answer from you now, but are we still tracking that? Are we still planning to grow that? Is that still a goal here?
Yes, we are. And that is part of that college, career, workforce, military enlistment readiness component that's coming out in 3 years. So we are already planning for it though. Drew Mitchell and I are working on those components, but that is one of those. So basically it looks at what percentage of you are career ready. And you can hit it any number of ways, one of which is to earn 3 on 3 AP tests. So, and a student cannot count for you twice. So some of the other measures are an honors diploma, military enlistment, CCP courses, pre-apprenticeships, things like that. And so it takes all of those different components into consideration, and you basically add up how many students you can qualify under one of those components out of how many you have total, and it gives you a percentage. You're rated on a star rating. So that's coming. We're going to go ahead and track that this year because we kind of want to know where we would stand right now moving forward so that we can start to plan for that and make sure that, yeah, the rating is important, but we also want to make sure we're doing what's best for kids. So.
Well, thank you. And I think that that's a perfect example of how the culture of continuous improvement has really taken. You're looking at something that's not even being measured until 3 years from.
Right. Absolutely. Okay.
All right, now we can have these lovely young ladies
Yes.
up here waiting for us.
So tonight you're going to hear from LECC and LES tonight, and then you'll hear from the other 4 buildings next month to dig into their report cards. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Garrett now, who is the principal at LECC.
Hello, good evening. I'm Sarah Gehring. Thank you for having us back this year. Jen and I to report out this month, and the other principals will follow next month. If you could scoot a couple slides back for me, Jen, I'd appreciate it. Should be one with step up to quality information on it. At LECC, we are really fortunate and wear the badge of honor proudly that we are the starting block, the jumping off point for so many of our Loveland Tigers as they start their educational journey here in Loveland City Schools. I'm looking for a slide that just has step up to quality information on it, but it's all good. I just wanted to share that our preschool program, inclusive of our preschool, well, we want to own the fact that we started the 5-star trend here in Loveland City Schools back in 2016 before it became a thing last week. That we are so proud of our hard work and our determination to have a top-notch preschool program that is available for students with disabilities as well as students who can access that. That step up the quality process and the preschool licensing visit is going to be happening soon. We were notified last week at the end of by ODE that our consultant, our on-site inspector, will be coming to meet with our preschool team to review our records, to review student records, staff records, visit our classrooms, meet with teaching staff, clinic staff, and myself to move us forward into hopefully earning an additional 5 stars. And so I wanted to share that information with the board that will be forthcoming. Oh, you're good. With LECC and first grade moving to LPS within the past few years, we aren't really
appearing on the report card as we were previously with our early literacy data. And so with that information in mind, I would just like to highlight some of our assessment data that we do in-house to monitor our students' successful growth as they start off in Loveland City Schools. And so at the start of kindergarten, we start with instructing students how to access the learning community here. We provide explicit instruction around positive behavioral standards, procedures and routines, stamina to attend to tasks at school, interactions with their friends and peers, as well as the building staff within the school setting. Our instructional process, our approaches center around building students' skills with letter naming, letter sound correspondence, and early math, number identification, counting, operations, and geometry. Our hope is that our Tiger Cubs, when they leave us at LACC, which is always very sad, they leave us with the essential foundational skills that provide them future opportunities to learn and practice as they advance through their education. Clearly, you will see that in the upper grades reports as they report out to you today, both with Jeff report as well as the principals that will be here next month. So first up, I'd like to discuss our kindergarten readiness assessment, otherwise known as the KRA. This is an entry point required assessment by the state of Ohio that starts on our first day of instruction with our kindergarten students. And lucky for us in the state of Ohio, ODE shifted the window for testing we used to have through the end of October to get the KRA finished. They reduced it to the first 20 days of school. So our teachers just completed that last week. And this assessment is a lot of work for our teaching staff. So I do want to give them credit for that. We look at gathering information both individually, one-on-one with students, as well as in small group around their language and literacy skills, their mathematics skills, their physical well-being, motor development, and social emotional development. This is a screener basically to tell us how do kindergarten students come ready to learn at Loveland City Schools. And so up here on the screen, you can see our past few years of our KRA overall score average, as well as the KRA state overall score. As you can see, Loveland kindergarten students average, they demonstrate some of the foundational skills that prepare them for instruction based on the standards set by the state of Ohio. They are usually at or above the state average. And so we kind of dance between demonstrating readiness on an average basis or approaching readiness. So as you can see from last year, the average kindergarten student in Loveland entered our school at the beginning of the year approaching readiness. So they had those foundational skills that will set them up for success throughout their journey here in Loveland Schools. And so I just want to focus that for us at this time, that it's not always a pretty picture, yet we are taking all kids into our classrooms to meet them where they're at individually or in classrooms. That takes a lot of heavy lifting. And I'm so proud of our kindergarten team and what they do within a year to get them prepared for first grade. As you can note for this.
Sarah, am I correct if the state was aiming for you to have a 298 in demonstrating readiness? Is that the kind of thing that would mean that then you have kids coming into kindergarten, they don't need anything in kindergarten because they're already, do you know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't say that they wouldn't necessarily need anything, but they're kind of a step ahead of their in that emerging
I'm just looking to see
alphabetic. Yep.
The numbers mean, because the state score average is in the approaching readiness,
Correct.
not the readiness. So if they're fully ready, then it's like saying, okay, let's just move on with all the other things we can do in kindergarten. We don't have to get them ready for school.
And we don't necessarily skip a beat with introducing them to instruction, both academically speaking, but also accessing learning in general, because we come from a place that all kids need explicit instruction around how to do things. And so it's important that even if you might be in that demonstrating readiness, that you can't take something away from those conversations, have as whole groups in our kindergarten classrooms. And I think it's just to note again, back to the point of, this is where we're started. Look at all the amazing things that the progress that is being shown in our other grade levels is demonstrating because of the strength of our programming in our preschool. And that's where it starts.
Thanks.
Another data point that I'd like to present to you is our Ames Web Plus kindergarten baseline data for the fall. So this is a early literacy composite profile for our students that are starting kindergarten this year, as well as in the fall 2021 fall period, benchmark period. And then we skip a year, and I'll explain that in a minute, but also then backtracking to fall 2019. So this is a one-to-one assessment that we complete with all of our kindergarten students. We did this at the end of August. So I think that's also very important to note that these students, like our KRA, it's almost gauging what do they come into school knowing already. So as you can see, for this school year, 37% of our students fell within the tier 1, that green. And that's demonstrating that they were on grade level for those beginning benchmarks in the areas of letter naming fluency and then letter word sound fluency. If we backtrack to last year, we had 41% of our kindergarten students starting with us on grade level at the start of the school year, and then skipping 2022. That is the reason why that has been skipped, is because we did not use AIMSA plus kindergarten to assess them for the early literacy composite. We used another measure. And so to be able to have comparable data, didn't feel like that was an appropriate measure to share with you. But as you can see, prior to COVID, we can recognize that 52% of our students came in on grade level at the start of kindergarten. So again, we have work to do, and we don't sit around and admire that in our kindergarten data meetings. We don't admire that in our conversations with our reading teachers. We think through what plans can we put into place to be responsive to this, to help our students grow in a positive way to ensure their future successes. And so this information is leading our school psychologists, myself, and our reading teachers, along with our partnership with our Gina team, to have conversations that are intentional around what pull-out services will be provided these first few weeks of school around reading intervention that's happening 4 days a week for 30 minutes with one of our reading teachers, as well as what tier 2 intervention supports are being placed into the general education classroom by the teacher, and being responsive to those students that are also falling within the yellow and red as well, to link up with our reading teachers.
So how much so a tier 1 student, how much intervention is happening there compared to the kids that green one?
In terms of I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So in the red band, I'm assuming you can go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
So the red is more prepared?
No, less prepared.
Yeah,
so let me start that over. So green is saying that they are on
So
at the start of kindergarten.
yeah.
Yellow is approaching, and red is off grade level.
So in that tier 1, so how much intervention is happening for those? How much time are they getting in intervention in the classroom compared to the kids that are in the green who are on track?
So I can say for our core instruction, last year we piloted at LECC and LPS, the Being the Reader literacy program. I was not part of those initial conversations, but what I can say, the stronger our core is, the stronger our interventions. And so when we have a strong core, like Being a Reader through collaborative classrooms that also aligns with our writing curriculum, we're doing whole group lesson instruction around pre-alphabetic skills that then advance through alphabetic understanding by the end of kindergarten that's expected. And then from there, once we move forward through whole group, we would then progress into small group. And so students in the coming weeks will be working through a small group placement that is based on their level now, that will also be occurring within general education by the teacher, in addition to other interventions that may be occurring for those students outside the classroom.
Just as a reminder, Sarah, just to remind me, we did designate ESSER funds to add a reading specialist. I think we added a 0.5, so we have a full reading specialist there. And that's when you're talking about the small group.
Yes.
Have you seen a difference with that?
So what I would share is, first, I want to thank the board and the administration's commitment to providing that opportunity for us at LECC, because as you can see, our need is growing, and our need to be able to be responsive to those needs of our students is continuing. And so what I can say is that we are able to provide more instruction on a regular basis, consecutive days in a row,
each week to our students that we determined to be needing that pull-out support than we were able to at the start of last year.
Thank you.
And then just one final thing that I want to note for the board is previous years, we also reported out on our math, reading, and math data. We just started map testing today, so that data is not available at this time yet. Lots of kindergartners today trying to figure out how to move the mouse. So it was a lot of fun, and that's why I have flats on. So thank you for your time. Does anybody else
One
have
more
any
question,
questions?
and this is separate from what you said, but I know that you spent your own time this summer working on like an early childhood leadership group. Thank you for taking the time of doing that. I certainly appreciate it. Without putting you on the spot, is there anything that you found particularly valuable?
So actually, prior to coming here this evening, I was a few minutes late because I was actually in my fellowship meeting for this month. And tonight we met with the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council. And our focus was how the state is trying to enhance their ability to coach administrators like myself to basically be better early childhood administrators. And one thing that I took away from that, and I think that I've repeated through tonight, is how important, if you're struggling as a district to see problems in later grades, are we going back and looking at what's occurring in those early childhood grade levels, as well as at the primary school, to ensure that we are setting kids up for success from day one? And so that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I've had through my experience thus far with this fellowship, is how important it is and how serious it is what we do each day. And I know some people are like, wow, you work with preschool and kindergarten every day. It's hard work. And I want to give kudos to my team for showing up every day and doing what's best for kids. And so we take that, we don't take that lightly. And so we are celebrating all of our building successes because we know that those Tiger Cubs that started with us, we were part of that journey.
And I want to compliment Sarah for the hard work and obviously the passion she puts into it. When I go over there, I get to see the fun and I get to see the little kids who think I'm a giant, but it's such a great culture over there. I do want to say that I think people underestimate the amount of accountability that comes with preschool. The state of Ohio has really put a lot of different protocols in place, and it is a lot. And Sarah does a great job with it. I'll also tell the board, I did put out an all-day kindergarten FAQ in regards to the levy. We'd had some questions about the efficacy of all-day kindergarten. And I think if you talk to our instructors, those students that may not come with the reading skills that some other students have, I think that's what you're speaking to right there very well.
And Kevin's going to be able to capture that growth for us too, just between that leap from kindergarten to first grade. So I'm excited for you guys to hear from him.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I am Jen Foran, the proud principal at LES, and I get to talk to you about our part of the report card. And our learners, third and fourth graders, they're our youngest test takers in the district. So many of you have had children that have gone through, and our 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds are taking these big tests. And it's a big deal for an 8-year-old to spend 4 days doing testing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the results of those, but I'm very proud of all of the work. I told her I was going to borrow, they've worked their tiger tails off this year. I love that. It's now going to be part of my vocabulary. So you can go to the next slide. And the next one. All right. Okay. So the first component we're going to talk about is achievement. This is where you look at how all of the students did. They lump all of their scores together and it shows where our students ranked in all of the different categories that are there. Advanced being the highest and limited being the lowest. And so John, if you go to the next one. If you remember the PI scores, the performance indicator scores from in the past, this is kind of what that is now, the achievement score. What we're really excited about is really in a disrupted year with the rolling quarantines last year through February. If you take a look at that, 78% of our kids scored in the top 2 categories of the test. So we had with advanced and accomplished. You'll see advanced plus up there in the dark green. Those are our very small handful of students who are grade accelerated in math and took an out of level exam, and they scored advanced plus on that. So not only were they accelerated out of their grade level, they scored very high on the test. So it was an appropriate placement for them. So that is that first one. Next one is gap closing. Gap closing is made up of several components, and we'll look at that on the next slide, but this really is that reduction of gaps in ELA and math within your subgroups. So if we look at the next slide, that big chart on the left there has all of the different components that go into gap closing for our grade level. The first one is the chronic absenteeism. That's not going into effect until 22-23. You'll see that we met all of the gifted performance indicators, and the gifted performance indicators, I would defer to Stacy on them, but they are a lot. There's a lot that goes into that. It's very, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. The next one is our English learners. We did not have enough English learners that took the test to make up a subgroup to be reported on. So that's a non-reported category for us. Graduation, also non-reported for us. We'll leave that to the high school. And then you'll see we have achievement and progress. And you'll see in both achievements, we hit the target. We did not hit the target in progress, which is going to be on the next slide that we'll talk about. So progress, Stacy referred to that earlier. Progress is really measuring the academic performance of students compared to their expected growth. Again, we had a disrupted school year. However, we also are only looking at one population, that's our fourth grader. Fourth graders is where you first start seeing this measure because it has to be based on a previous year's test. So they just start taking the test in third grade. Fourth grade is when we can measure that. How much progress did they make based on their projected proficiency? So we hope that our students will make a year's worth of growth in a year's time. That's what a 3 is. So 3, if you look up there, it'll say it's evidence that the school met student growth expectations. Of course, we want to be even higher than that. And there is a statistical formulation for that, you know, and people who are much better at statistics can explain it much better than I can. But know that we met that expectation. That's a 3. We're always hoping to go even further. But I think in a disrupted school year, I'm very proud of the fact that our students grew like they did and performed as well as they did. And that's a real testament to the teachers, the students, the community, the support of everybody in this room. It's a real testament to that. Our next one is early literacy. So Sarah's building, Kevin's building, they kind of build and get to our building, and all of those mesh together to give us this early literacy. In our level, there are 3 different components that make up that. You've got the proficiency in third grade reading. So that goes back to that achievement score. And these are all weighted with different weights. You've got the promotion to fourth grade, and then you've got improving K-3 literacy. So if you look at the next slide, it kind of breaks down all of that. So you get a percentage of how many kids passed third grade reading, how many were promoted to fourth grade, and improving K-3 literacy. I think it's interesting to note on the improving K-3 literacy that it's looking at who are on track, what students are on track, what students are off track. The state has us measure that in early fall, and they give us certain diagnostic tools that we can use. We use map growth as that tool, and that determines there's a set percentage, a set score that students need to get to say, are they on track, are they off track? So that's how we decide that in the fall. To decide who moves to on track, it's based on the Ohio State test. So you're not measuring map growth to map growth, apples to apples. You are measuring map growth to Ohio State test, which is a much more different and difficult test. So you're looking at how many students do you move out of that, and that's that weighted percentage. And back in Stacy's, where she showed how many people got the scores, I think if you look at early literacy, we scored very well in that compared to other districts. The next day, it just shows you how the weighted percentage came up. And then the last one, I wanted to share this with you. This is our pre-pandemic and post-pandemic progress. What I think, there are a couple things I think that are noteworthy here. First, we are not back to our pre-pandemic achievement scores. You'll see there's a 2019, 2020 where there's only one score and it says 60%. Yeah, in that middle column there. That is because that is the fall third grade reading, which is kind of a benchmarking test that gives us information on our students and what we need to work on with them. School closed in March, no tests that year. So we have kind of a break of where the testing is. But if you look on those last two columns, what is interesting here is you get cohort information. Now we're actually looking at how did our kids do from third grade to fourth grade in ELA and math. So if you look in 2021, our third grade ELA score, 72% of our kids passed. When those kids moved to fourth grade in ELA, almost 82% passed. So we went from 72 to 82%. I'm sorry, go down, yeah, 82.4%. So we grew in that area. Then if you look at the math scores for third grade in 2021 was 82.6, and we grew to, I believe that says 88.9. So there's a lot of growth. And what I like about that is you're seeing an actual comparison of our students from year to year. So that growth is happening across the years. I think when you take third graders and you give this big test, it's a lot. But what we know when you have the interventions and the enrichments and all of the things in place, the good instruction in place, we see that they're growing here. So that, I think, is our last slide on that one.
Any questions? She dazzled us.
Okay, well, I will just end by saying I'm very proud to stand up here and represent the people that do the work. I just paved the way for them to do it, but I have an amazing staff that works so hard every day to ensure that our kids are getting what they need. And we have a great community and a wonderful supportive board and administration. So thanks to all of you. There's a lot of ownership by everybody support. So thank you.
Opportunities to chime in because I know that you too spent a significant amount of personal development time outside of your typical jobs. There was I think a Hamilton County ESC meeting, and then there was was it Butler County ESC?
The roundtables,
Right.
yeah.
Anything that you cared to?
So
just to point out, our administrators as well as our teachers are working well beyond their stated hours for
Oh.
anybody who cares to look at that.
Well, what's exciting for me this year is pre-pandemic, when we would go to the instructional councils at Hamilton County, I was able to take teacher leaders with me, and they learn from, it's an opportunity to learn from other people in your profession. We don't often get, we get holed up in our buildings and we're not networking like we would like to. So that gives us that opportunity. So this year I was able to take teachers with me again. And it's nice to show them off truly, because when you listen to them talk and contribute, it's a very proud moment. The roundtables are starting. Mr. Fancher and I will start going to those. There's a lot of legal presentations there. So we learn about updates to school law. This time we're visiting another district. We'll be visiting at their central office. I believe it's in Monroe the first time. And so we'll be going to different districts and learning about different things that are happening there. So it helps with our professional growth. Yeah.
I would just jump in and say thank you for your strong leadership. Jen is an amazing leader at her building, and her teachers respond, as well as her assistant principal, Jane Miller, does a great job. She is busy with special education at the elementary level. That's can be a full-time job, and she does a great job with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything you and your staff do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't know, Mr. Bravo, do you have anything else, or is
That is it.
that's it? I just wanted to say, I don't know if Andrea Connor sits around listening to Loveland Board of Education meetings in the evening, but I wanted to make sure that we mentioned her name as a person who certainly played a big part in the achievement of Loveland schools, even though she's chosen to go to a different district where I think she's playing a very good role for them. But I wanted to make sure that we mentioned her name as part of this.
Thank you for doing
That
that.
we had as
We
well.
all texted her and said it was her fault. We got 5 out of 5 stuff. I appreciate you mentioning that.
Past weekend. And, her son, and they convinced the two of them that mother, son, David.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. All right. If that is the end of superintendent updates, then we move into board resolutions. And our first resolution that Michaela has hung around for, I'm sure, is to approve the 2022-2023 student representatives. So I'll ask if there is I don't see a motion. Do we need a motion on that? Do we need a resolution?
So moved.
Well, wait 1 second. This is where we announce you.
Okay.
This is where you find out.
I have a motion from Reverend Eilert and a second from Mrs. Washburn. Anything else you want to share with us before we vote on that resolution and let Michaela?
Just one thing to add, just kind of the overall process. Again, great conversations with all 3 candidates. And I think they have a lot to add and more than maybe we've even had our students add in the past. And so when we have our governance session at a yet to be determined time, I think that's one of the topics. It'd be great to talk a little bit about how can we get our student representatives more engaged in overall process to make sure we get that student perspective on issues in addition to events.
I'm excited to have 3 representatives this year for the first time.
Okay. And so as I see the names, Austin will be here. And then we have Michaela and then we have Kate. And I don't know how to pronounce Kate's last name. Do you know how to pronounce? I'll have to ask.
Great.
Kraybacher. Thank you. So those will be the 3 representatives that we'll be voting on. Any other questions, comments? All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes.
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 Motion carried. Congratulations, Michaela. We're glad to have you with us. So thank you.
Now you can sneak out.
It's being recorded, you sneaking out, Michaela. I just want to say that.
For the record, you stayed longer than most of our students.
That's true.
We're just glad you didn't sneak out right before we voted on you.
That's
That
right.
would have been a letdown. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks, Michaela. Have a good evening. All right. The next item on the agenda is new levy funds accountability. It's a resolution. I need a motion to adopt the resolution as printed in board docs.
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Is there a second?
I'd second.
And Dr. Swetch now seconded. Basically, I mean, I can read it, but it's probably better that it is printed there because it's concerning the levy that's on the ballot in November, the assurance for how the funds will be utilized. The funds will have an intended purpose, and this resolution is to identify funds that have not been able to be used for their intended purpose. It's assuring that they will be. And the only way they wouldn't be used in the way specified is if something comes before the board and a change is made. But the board is stating that those funds will be used for those stated purposes. Mr. Doherty, question?
Not a question, but I comment on this and the levy in general a bit right now. I think the genesis of this resolution was in the interest of things like trust and transparency and truth, which I'm seeing all over the place all of a sudden. And I'm frankly struggling to kind of relate to where all of that is coming from. And I have to say that I found myself spending way too much time on social media in the last couple of weeks. Shame on me. It's not a particularly reliable place to go for information, but you do get a peek into what some of the discussion going on in the community is. A former boss of mine always said, numbers are your friends. You've heard me say this before, even if you don't like what they say. What matters are the facts, and that's the way that I try to look at the district and base my advice to everyone on. Similarly, I continue to advise the community to use your own minds, look into the facts and judge for yourself to ensure that you're getting the complete and accurate story. I've spent a lot of time on the state-produced so-called CUP report. Mike mentioned it before. Enforce what you've said, Mike, as it has a bunch of statistics on each of the 600 or so school districts across the state that serve about 1.5 million kids. It's about the most reliable source I know for the information that it provides. Based on it, I've suggested privately to Mr. Broadwater to keep an close eye on a few specific areas, but I've actually been surprised by much of what it says. This report doesn't track academics. The scorecard where Loveland ranks in the top 2%, I'm rounding, Mike, the top 2% of Ohio districts tells most of that story. I have to wonder if you're in that top 2% of Ohio, are we not also at a comparable level nationally? I don't know, but I'd make a fair bet on that one. The CUP report, on the other hand, is about financial and operating metrics. And as Mike had said before, for example, that top 2% performance is achieved while, according to the report, spending at only the midpoint of all districts. In other words, there's about 300 districts that spend more and 300 districts that spend less per student than we do. So with just a true, just average level of spending, the district, let me get my sheet open here. The district delivered on its primary mission extraordinarily well. No kidding. This is really well done. That spending includes everything. It's salaries, benefits, administrative headcount, and more. The data paints a different picture from what you hear about some of the line items. But whatever you want to think about those areas, guess what? The bottom line includes it all. And it's still the bottom line. The job got done really, really well without extraordinary costs. So if you use the rest of the state's 600 districts as a benchmark, there's no big story about irresponsible, uncontrolled spending here. The facts don't support it. In some respects, actually quite the opposite happens. In my view, the issue is much more about our household tax burden than the cost of running these great schools. The schools are costing what you'd expect them to cost and getting extraordinary results in doing so. At one end of the spectrum, you have districts where the state pays as much as 75% of the cost of the district. In our case, the state pays about 1/3 of the bill, less than half of some other districts. The rest is mostly footed by homeowners. And of course, the state doesn't have any money we haven't already given it through sales and income taxes. It's a very complicated tax system with an overriding theme of those with more pay more. Whether they get that right can be debated, but it is the system we all live with. The good news is that our average income ranks in the top 5% of districts. We also rank in the top 1/3 of property values. The bad news is that income and property value are two key parameters in determining how much state funding we get or don't get. And over the last 10 years, the CUP data indicates that the compounded annual growth rate of both income and property taxes have actually kept in line with each other, and the rate of total school expenditure increases trails income growth. This is not the story that you normally hear. The public schools are a community asset. Their performance reflects on our property values, whether each of our families use its services or not. Good schools correlate to higher property values and add to Loveland being a desirable community. Poor performing schools have the opposite effect. And I've actually found that there are studies supporting this otherwise widely held belief. It's not just common sense. People have actually stopped to do the research on this. One of the superintendent and treasurer's tasks is to look beyond today. Financially, that includes ensuring we don't reach a point in the year where there's not enough cash in the bank to cover the checks we write. The so-called $14 million reserve is actually a point-in-time cash balance that goes up with our twice annual tax payments and down with monthly cash outflows of payroll and other expenses. Blink, and that number changes, both up and down, and at times dramatically. The treasurer's cash balance report for this month demonstrates that pretty profoundly. The balance, however, over time relentlessly erodes as we pay more this year than we did last year for just about everything. With property tax revenue essentially fixed, expenses eventually outpace revenue, and the risk that will drop below a state mandated deficit spending threshold, or worse, not having sufficient cash when checks need to be written, becomes real. The district has reduced headcount and eliminated services in the past to buy us time. It's asking voters now to approve the first increase in 8 years to avoid using that strategy going forward. Each household is different, and I do understand that. Each household is different with its own unique issues. And we all ultimately have to make our own judgments about this levy and its support of the school's future needs. All that I ask is that everyone please take the time to get the facts and understand the real picture of Loveland schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any questions about the resolution?
I might just add this resolution is a result of previously open dialogue in the board here about accountability for these funds that address things that we aren't necessarily doing today. We have the ambition to do, and we're trying to be open and honest in saying that there are challenges in getting some of these things done. And we're going to continue to be open about that. And if we encounter challenges that we can't surmount, we want to make sure that what we do with that money, provided it is passed as part of the levy, that those decisions are open and the board is held accountable for them going forward.
I don't think we've said that this is particularly related to the conversation around the funds that we've said we're identifying for high school busing and for the additional FTE.
Right.
In the levy funding, just to make sure.
Right, and as a matter of course, use of the contingency funds would fall into this as well.
Yeah, one comment I would make, and I appreciate those comments, is as the superintendent, I welcome that accountability. I work for this community. They're the shareholders. If we tell them that's what we're doing, then that's what we need to do. And so with this resolution, I welcome it. That's what we're working together to make sure we keep our promises and we continue to do the great things we do on being fiscally sound, doing what we do. But I appreciate the resolution, and it holds me accountable to make sure we're doing the right things for kids. And ultimately, every discussion we've had is about kids. And when you see a Michaela, you know they're worth it. So, thank you.
I'm very happy to support this resolution. I think it's the appropriate thing. And I think for all of those reasons, and just to piggyback on Kevin's comments, was able to read them earlier today in the board reports and really resonated with everything you said. Really appreciate the fact that you took the time to think those things through and to share them. I think they're really helpful thoughts that are certainly, there was nothing in there that I didn't say, yes. This is, I think, the right way to look at the issues before us, and I appreciate the extra research you did looking at that national level. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. If there's nothing else, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Schwachnow,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes,
Ms. Washburn.
Yes.
motion carried. The next item, the next board resolution is the Business Advisory Council Plan. And I will move that we approve that. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty seconded. I will make note that there are a few formatting issues with it. I don't know if that has to do with the board docs problems, but we will obviously do our best to get that formatting fixed so that it stays there as a record of what's going on. I did have a question on it. There is a board member representative on the Business Advisory Council, correct?
Can ask that
Yes.
as well.
And I don't see, it's Mrs. Washburn, I believe.
It is.
And I didn't see her name on there. So I don't know if that also was a formatting issue or.
Let me double check that piece. The formatting issue came when we downloaded or uploaded it from a Word to a PDF, and something weird with all of the names that we put under the businesses involved for the speed mentoring
They got
piece. And so,
Posed, so.
yeah, I'll get that fixed by tomorrow.
Okay.
But that's what happened whenever we made it.
So
PDF.
those were just the going into it questions, but I did not see Mrs. Washburn,
She is.
board member rep.
Yes, yep. I will be sure we have that added.
All right. Dr. Arso, do you have any additional report on the business?
So this is, I have to upload this to the state by the end of the month. And so we had our first meeting last week, had a lot of great people in attendance. I will say, coming from a district who does the Business Advisory Council a little bit differently, where we partnered with Hamilton County ESC, which was great. And it was a great collaborative. Coming to Loveland and seeing the way that Loveland does it, we have so much to offer here. I love that we do our own independent piece of it, because I felt like the conversation that we had last week at Business Advisory Council was really rich, and we were able to really focus on Loveland specifically. And so I really enjoyed that conversation. Just to kind of give you a very brief overview, there are basically three things that they ask us, that three quality practices through the Business Advisory Councils of Ohio. And we're asked to sort of put in what our activities look like. So just to give you a brief overview of what those are for this planning, and a lot of this work comes down to some of the work that Drew Mitchell does as well. So he is a vital part of this plan. The first component is developing professional skills for future careers. It's unfortunate that we can only put two things in each of these boxes, because he does so much work with all of the buildings that we just have to pick two. It's really hard to narrow it down, but the two that we picked for that are the speed mentoring piece and the he does a career skills development video series. It's a 4-part series. So those are the chose to put in our plan for this year and highlight. The second practice is building partnerships, and the activities are engagement with the tools construction on careers programs, which is something new that we're actually going to present on later this year whenever we bring a couple of representatives from our Business Advisory Council, but that's something new that he's just starting this year. And then Exploration Wednesday at the high school, which is coming up here soon, which each of the grade levels have a different activity that they'll be engaging in that day. And then the third component is coordinated experiences. And for those two activities that we are capturing, we're doing the shadow internship, co-ops, pre-apprenticeships, and then the project Lead the Way class that we have at the high school. So those are the pieces that we've captured for this year's plan. And then one additional piece to highlight, you can apply to be an Ohio Business Education Leader Award for excellent business advisory councils. Very long. But Drews and I talked about this a little bit and looked at the qualifications for it. And we feel that Loveland is a very strong candidate. So we have gone ahead and applied for that award. So we will let you know whenever we hear something back on that.
We want to see how long the plaque is when you, to
It's a
get.
very long title.
2-page plaque.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Orso? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, then can we vote on that, Mr. Right?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Schwachnow,
Yes.
Ms. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. See, we got your name back on there, Mrs. Washburn, so we're not taking any work away from you. The next board resolution, board moving resolution is the policy manual updates. And I'll go ahead and make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. I think I gave most of the discussion for that in my board report of what was happening. Anybody have any questions about the particular policies? Just I'll trust that I read them really well, right?
The green parts were very enlightening.
The green parts, yes, they were, you don't know how hard it was to get all correct on there so that you could see all of that. It was a little bit difficult to get board docs to deal with that for us.
I would just say that on the changes of these, very briefly, that the eligibility of residents and non-resident student as actually speaking to the authorization from the board by policy to utilize the National School Lunch Program for waiver of fees for full-time kindergarten. So that's the qualification, that's the language. Attendance is to address an issue that Mr. Collier brought up with students out of district, out of country for 15 days. So, and also there was some language in there about COVID that actually had dates I took out. Public records has language that has been, first it changes superintendent to treasurer for the responsibility, which it is, but it also addresses the importance of the records log, and in that the purpose of it, which includes but not limited to documentation of the district's response to each request, the auditor states star rating system for transparency in government, and to provide convenient access to public records that have already been requested by others. And I've actually had folks thank me for that who have been interested in the provided for others. And folks have been very patient because I do this on the weekends and I'm not the quickest on this, but I try to turn around as quickly as possible. And then the food service, I just consolidated 4 or 5 required policies into one. So it's a book instead of pages of a book. And then, of course, the consolidation of the crosswalk for the 2900.
No other questions or comments?
I look forward to many more of these discussions.
I'll remember that as I'm working on.
Could we pick that sarcasm up off the floor that just dripped there? That
We probably ought to
okay.
say this is very difficult laborious work,
Great.
and we're glad you're doing it and we're not.
And all kidding aside, beyond that, which is my primary point, policy as dry as it can be is very important. Policy is what keeps us all, honest and operating within the bounds of rules that we've set. And is yet another step towards trust and transparency. So I appreciate you doing all that work.
well, I appreciate the ability to deal with it somewhat humorously because it is a very important, very dry, very painstaking, laborious job. And I hope that those who listen understand that the policy is very important and the humor around it is simply a venting kind of the effort of all that. I don't put any funny things in the policy, like Easter eggs hidden in there or anything.
I would call it an acknowledgement of the strength of a board with different levels of strength and interest.
The public may not realize this kind of thing, but in past meetings, we've had to go through, I don't know, dozens and dozens of policies at a time. And I actually took the time to usually print these things off, and I'm not kidding. I mean, it'd be about this much. And you've got to read it all and you've got to understand what it means and what the changes are. Somebody's got to do that hard work because it's kind of our rules.
Right.
And you do that, and Rob does that. I think we're all thanking you for that hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for thanking. All right. If there's nothing else, can we vote on that, Mr.?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchenow,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. We then move out of board resolutions. We usually don't have quite that many, but we're moving out of them and into Director of Human Resources. So it would be appropriate for a motion to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified, classified, homebound, substitute, and supplemental positions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. I didn't get to say the 2022-2023 school year. That's one of my favorite things is reading that whole resolution. Anyway, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Collier, do you have additional report? We thank you for all the information on board docs. But anything additional for this evening?
Yes. I do want to take a quick second to just make sure, I know we've been talking a lot about academic success for our district. And something that struck me as I was listening to Dr. Orso and to Jen and Sarah, who were talking about their progress for their buildings. And if you think back to the LECC presentation that Ms. Gehring was giving, that Sarah was giving, where how students come to us readiness for kindergarten, if you remember. And we were basically right around that state average. But I want you to think about that for a minute and then think back to some of our other conversations on how we compare to the state when it comes to when students are older in our system, and that comparing ourselves to the state isn't necessarily the average for the state isn't really the mark that we want to kind of compare ourselves to, because there is quite a difference between the state average achievement for all the 600 and some odd districts where we are. And that really isn't the, when you get up into 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, that's not really the mark that tells us the most, comparing us to the average. But look back to where it starts, and we're right at that average. So I just want to make sure to point out that you see that with community support and a great community that we have and hardworking staff, you can see that state average for achievement for students and readiness, we continue to make that gap get larger and larger from where our average student scores versus the state average. And I just wanted to make sure to point that out. It struck me. I thought I should talk about it and mention it. And it really just goes to the great work that all of our staff do with our kids as they start at LACC and end up through high school. And I just wanted to make sure to point it out. That's all. And yes, I have some information about the not so exciting things that happen in the HR world. Even though I will tell you, I do take the moments of, sometimes, my role isn't necessarily in the achievement component, but I do take pride in making sure that I know that our staff are working hard, and I'm working hard to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right places and maintaining great staff. I just wanted to make sure to point out that we have a couple of retirements that are on here at the top. Kim Shelton, who was a 4th grade teacher at LES, she has let us know that she's retiring at the end of the school year, and she'll be completing her 20th year here at the district with us. Just wanted to make sure to give her a shout out and to congratulate her working in her last year. You will notice A2 and A3, we have 2 bus driver resignations. Those were both resignations that we knew about. Those aren't surprises. However, just to keep in mind that, there's been a lot of conversation around bus drivers. Just wanted to make sure to point that out. And then we have a kindergarten teacher who has resigned, and we are working to find that replacement. We actually have that about wrapped up. I thought we were going to be able to put it on the board agenda today, and we were about 2 hours too late. So that'll be coming in the board update that you get every week from Mike. Something else to point out is that we had a resignation in a previous board meeting for Len Niemeyer, who was an art teacher with us at the elementary school. And another one of our art teachers, she's retiring, and she'll be finished mid-year. Katie Timfley, who is an art teacher at LIS and LECC, is taking over the position at LES, which is a full-time position, and Katie's current position is a 0.8 FTE. So she's moving into the full-time role, and we are looking to fill the 0.8 position. A lot of the other pieces here are, other standard type pieces. There is some change in movement for those of you who are aware of our administrative assistant roles that have become open at the board office. Donna Ernst, who is currently right now the 10-month secretary at LIS, she is going to be the new administrative assistant in Jesse's office. And there has been some seat changing with those types of positions, just making sure that you guys are aware of people that you and expect them in a certain spot. Now they're in a different role, just making sure. And we are going to be glad to welcome Donna to the central office team. And then just please note that there were 2 items that were in yellow that were not there on the first viewing on Friday that are on here now. So making sure to note that for you guys, and that they are noted in board docs in yellow. And I will take any questions.
Just to reiterate, you had said 2 bus drivers had resigned, but hired.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Let's go back to the top there and make sure I'm.
It was written written correctly?
Yes, both of those are, along with Ms. Shelton, those are all retirements. And we did know about the 2 bus driver retirements. Thank you.
Garth, I haven't asked you in a while, but part of the headcount control that you and Mike have instituted is basically flat headcount.
Yep.
You're going to hire somebody. They're going to be essentially replacing somebody who may or may not have been in that position, may have been in another part of the organization.
That's correct.
Whatever. The question for you is to affirm that we are maintaining a kind of a flat headcount as you go through all these changes.
Yep. Yeah, there is not anything on tonight that is any kind of a new additional add of FT.
Well,
That's
and I would
correct.
even go a little bit the opposite direction. We're actually negative rather than positive, if I'm reading the numbers correctly,
That's correct.
which we don't necessarily want to be.
Now, we are going to work to find, as you probably have heard, we are really trying to find bus drivers. So with those 2 upcoming retirements, of course, we're trying to find replacements for them. And in these other places where we have some resignations, we are trying to find people to fill those roles. So as it stands right now, yes, this report would appear that we are kind of quote negative, but we are looking to fill those spots to be consistent of where we're at.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thought, just so the board is aware, I don't think it'd be a bad idea once a month in my board updates, just giving the board the FTE chart.
Sure.
So that way you're seeing that chart in real time, once a month updated. And we certainly talk about it every single day. The only concern you ever had, not a concern, the only FTEs you can't control is if you have special ed students that are in need of individual paras or
You have to do
certain things
those.
like that. And that's why I think if we would update monthly, if there is a change, we could explain that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Mike, that's a step, again, in support of transparency, clarity. When we talk about the levy, that'll give you the flexibility, if you need it, to add what turns out to be about 1% headcount.
Right.
5
right.
positions over the next 3 years, if you need them.
Great. Yeah.
But they'll be controlled the same way we're talking about right now. It'll be out in the open. Everybody will understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you'll have to have board approval to do it.
Yes, and I think let's do it. We'll do it once a month for the board. The most important thing we do for our students is putting the proper people in front of them. So that's number 1 importance with HR. Number 2, the most we spend fiscally is the people we put in front. And so that's why it's very important we have the chart as well as hiring good people. But I think moving forward, let's do that once a month, probably the week right before the board.
sure, we certainly can give you that updated, quote, up to date kind of report monthly. Sounds great with me. Also to keep in mind that a snapshot for a beginning of the school year is a part of the records request log. So if there are people who are at home that are wondering what that might look like, it was that particular document was records requested and it's available for folks to view.
Eric's point about the fact that we're now actually under what the benchmark that we're using when we say we will not exceed the FTE headcount, is that based upon the post reduction number when we reduced the 47
Right.
47 positions. So that's the benchmark then to
Right.
not exceed where we were at that.
Yeah, with Garth and I have talked, it's going to be very important to make sure in an open discussion, set what that FT number is. And the 5 FT, we have said it's certified. So that's your teachers. If we feel that there needs to be robust support in whatever area. But to your point, Jonathan, it's going to be very important for us. And that's a great way to start, is having these FT charts out every month. And just making sure the board is okay with the baseline that we're starting with. But I would think it would be where, after we've cut the 47 staff members, where that number is, probably would be a good start. But we can have conversations. That would be a good problem to have.
I didn't plan on this, but maybe I'll just use this as the opportunity to probe one quick dimension, and that's enrollment decline. I know you and I have had this conversation. I don't know if we've had it publicly, but you're comfortable that the FTE reductions have sort of right-sized to the decline in enrollment that we've experienced.
Right. I thought it was important to remind people this evening. My one slide did have the 47 staff positions cut, 17 which were teachers. So when you talk about, yes, there was a drop in enrollment, but it luckily coincided with the staff positions being eliminated. So it's righted itself. And so the thought with the 5 FTEs is, after lengthy discussion, if there was a program that needs to be supported more robustly, for example, I hear about the gifted program and performing arts and so forth. But then also, and I've said this to many different groups I've talked to, Loveland is kind of what you would call a bedroom community, and you see it go in cycles where you'll see enrollment go up. And then as the students get older and families get older, you see houses being sold to younger families, and it starts the progression back up. So I don't believe you would see a huge delta either way, up or down, but it's a long answer to your question. I believe we've been right-sized with the drop in enrollment, with the drop in staff member. Yes.
Something else to keep in mind, guys, and we've talked about this at previous meetings, is that part of what my role and what Mike and I look at is when we have a retirement, and we are trying to, if we are quote right size, but where is our need? Where was the retirement? Do we have that need there, or do we have a greater need someplace else? And we have illustrated that a couple of different times. For example, where we have this past school year, we are down 1 teacher for grade 5, general ed teacher, and 1 teacher for grade 2. So those 2 positions gave us an opportunity to see where is the need. One of the needs was having an additional special education teacher for our low incidence classrooms at the 5 through 8 campus. So it's just examples of, you know, we have to take a look at all the huge picture of it, and making sure where is our biggest need, while making sure that we are continuing to look at the bottom line, making sure that we are being fiscally responsible, but putting people in the places where we need them is part of our role.
Anything else? All right, then I think we might be ready to vote on that one.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schwetzstein.
Yes.
motion carried. The next item is a motion to approve adjustment to transportation substitute pay rates. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Doherty seconded, and this is to move the substitute rate to the same as step 1 on the negotiated pay rate. Mr. Collier.
Yes, the substitute rate for bus drivers right now is 17 3/4, and we're looking at making it to be base rate, which I believe is $20.53. What I want to make sure to point out is that we are not flush with a whole bunch of bus driver substitutes. We currently have 3 on the board agenda tonight. At the very bottom section, you'll hire a 4th. So we only have very few folks who are in this role, and we desperately need to make sure that we're and to keep these type of folks with us, because we really need their assistance. Of all of our drivers, if there is a day where they have to be off for a doctor's appointment, or they're sick or something like that, we have to have our substitute drivers. And this is just another step to ensure that we're getting our kids to school and maintaining the folks that we have.
Any questions?
But at the end of the day, the rate increase is small, and the number of folks that this goes along with is small. So the overall amount of money is a very, very small amount of money, is what I want to make sure that you guys understand.
But we have to have these people.
Yes, that is the underscore. We have to have these folks.
All right, any questions or comments? Mr. Giuffre.
Ms. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schwetzstein.
Yes.
motion carried. And then the final human resources is to approve the Loveland High School cheerleading teams to travel to Disney World for their national competition in February 2023. And this is a requirement that the district approve this travel so that they can go out of the district. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I heard Mr. Doherty first, so I'll put Reverend Eilert as the second. Any questions or discussion? Again, it is a requirement that we do. Generally, there's fundraising, the students, it's not committing the district to any money for this. It's simply covering the legal responsibility that
Correct.
they are going as a school group, and we approve that travel.
This would be a great opportunity to make sure to thank our booster organizations. Inside this proposal, which is in the admin section of board docs, you can see if you've looked through this proposal that the cost for this trip is being offset with money from the booster organization. And then any money that was needed above and beyond what the boosters were providing is at cost to the particular families that have students that are going on the trip. So there is no additional cost to the district.
I believe I also noticed in the documentation that the cheerleading teams were previously nominated to be able to go do this, but they were not able to travel before. This is the first time they've been able to travel for this competition. So
That's correct.
any other comments? Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schweitzer,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Collier.
Thank you.
All right, we move to treasurer items, and the first one is the financial reports. Is there a motion to accept the financial reports for August 2022? Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow. And those, as usual, are on board docs. Any questions on those? We are accepting those reports.
Would like to say that we did have a finance committee meeting. And in that, we talked about all the financials, specifically on this one, that we're taking the meter portfolio and we're putting it into a brokerage account with no fees so that we'll save about $6,000 since it's just going to sit there till it matures. And we also talked about cybersecurity and the things that we already are doing actively to secure the district, and also what other things we have in place and what's coming up to ensure that we educate our staff, continue to educate our staff, I should say, with regards to cybersecurity, because the crooks are getting very crafty. And so that was a good discussion. And then we did talk about forecast, but the last but not least was that the payment in lieu of transportation, we're going to maintain the status quo and continue to do what we've done in the past with regards to those payments. The families of the 18 students that we have approved.
I like that payment in lieu of transportation turns out to be pilot, so they get to pilot themselves.
Same as payment in lieu of property taxes.
Yes, I understand, but in this case, it.
One comes in, one goes out.
Yes. All right. Any other comments or questions about the financial reports? No, Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer,
Yes.
Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes. Motion carried. And then the next, the last treasurer item is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 permanent appropriations. And this also includes the line about contingency budgetary line item would be directed by action of the board prior to its reallocation. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Swetchnow moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded, and the appropriations are listed there. So obviously these are appropriations for expenditures.
And this is the hiccup on the application because the Business Advisory Council plan, when I posted it where it was in the agenda, it's now showing up on this item, and it was overriding the permanent appropriations. So we just pasted them right in there so that there was no question. So
Oh, I
that-
looked for it to see if it was still there.
I thought something was going wacky in my brain, but it's the application for some reason. for
Okay,
this.
but and so on board docs, let me make sure I've got the right thing here. What you're currently seeing on the board docs resolution
This was there before, what's printed on the agenda, and it was overwritten by the Business Advisory Plan. So you will see the attachment is under administrative content because it would take it there, but the minutes will be accurate and
Okay, so it will then get in there where it's supposed to be.
we just need to work with board docs to figure out what's going on.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments? Can we vote on that?
And Dr. Schwetchino,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Ms. Washburn.
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, the only other item on our agenda would be a resolution to go into executive session. I will tell our audience here in the building that there is no action planned for after this executive session. But you are welcome to stay and wait till we will come back out of executive session to adjourn the meeting. For the meeting that is being recorded and live, will the folks listening or watching live have a screen that says we're out to executive session? Okay. And when we come back, as I said, we will adjourn. This is a little different than the way we're recording it now is a little different than our previous one where we had this screen that came up. But anyway,
Any non-board members being included.
I'll do that when I do the motion in just a second, but I just wanted to let people know there won't be any action back. This executive session would be entered into in accordance with ORC 121.22 for the purpose of employment, evaluation, and compensation of a public employee. We would be inviting Mr. Broadwater into the meeting, and I believe we're inviting Mr. Giuffre into the meeting briefly concerning, again, employment of a public employee. That's what we're going in for. So be just the board, Mr. Giuffre, Mr. Broadwater. So is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved and I will seconded that. And it's not a debatable motion. So Mr. Giuffre, can we?
Ms. Washburn?
Yep.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchno.
Yes.
I have us going into executive session at 8:27. And we'll wait to hear. Oh, look, the executive session is in progress, but it's backwards. Have we stopped recording?
Yes.
Okay. And we are going to go down to the office. I think we'll go down.
John, for what it's
Candy office,
worth.
I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it still recording?
Still recording.
Or is it still broad?
It says still recording.
But just
I'll see the video.
All right, in the dark. Scatter some papers around.
Rob's or?
Yes.
That doesn't seem right, does it?
Oh.
Speaking of which, do we need to put these away in a closet when we're done?
I'll lock them up in the morning. Kevin, don't you know how to get out of executive session, don't you?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm on call this week, so grumpy.
I'm so tired. Some French speakers this year.
Ah,
French speakers.
fun.
Never had French speakers before.
Where are they from?
Oh, good.
Oh, we are. Woohoo. All right.
Jack, Kevin.
Yeah, give me just a second here, make sure.
Waiting for Kevin to check to make sure we're,
I'm just signing in
Broadcasting.
like from the outside.
to make sure that the broadcasting is working.
And
Then
we
we do-
are recording and we are live.
Thank you. All right, thanks for the purposes of those who are looking at this video live or regarding it on a film. I'll let you know that we just came out of executive session. We actually came out at 9:40. Took us a few minutes to get all of the details worked out to get back on the air. But the only thing that is to come before this board at this point is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Swetch now moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded.
Somebody writing this down since Rob's not
I am writing this down. All those in favor, please say aye.
here. Aye.
Motion carried. We are adjourned at 9:48. Thank you very much.